Chapter 433 to 435. Looking at the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Shirsui's eye sockets, Kuroto had a thoughtful expression for a while, then clearing up the thought he said to Shirsui, "You should take a good rest. At present, your body has just gone through genetic changes which is undoubtedly a very tiring process, so plenty of rest is necessary. Additionally, there are chances of unstable elements to appear, so you have to be aware of them too." According to Kuroto's estimation, even if the implantation operation is completed, it won't be considered truly completed until all the hidden dangers are eliminated and the genetic change is completely stabilized, which will take at least 2 weeks to a month of recovery and analysis. Shirsui was already in an exhausted state, so after listening to Kuroto's words, he nodded, closed his eyes, and soon fell asleep. The implantation operation, even with a 100% success rate, was no short of a life and death battle for him. Perhaps it was even more tiring than any life and death battle he has participated in up to now. As such, he really needed a short nap to be able to recover the bare minimum before he goes back to his home. Kuroto did not disturb Shirsui, and while Shirsui was sleeping, Kuroto cleaned up the messy operation room, realigned the fallen devices and monitors, and then reconnected them to Shirsui's body. And while recording the data displayed on various monitors, Kuroto started analyzing the result of the operation. Without a doubt, after the successful implantation of Hashirama cells, Yin and Yang chakra in Shirsui's body have fused, and the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is currently in Shirsui's eye sockets and has also entered a state of evolution. But perhaps because the stimulation for evolution wasn't enough, this state of evolution did not continue and stopped midway. As per Kuroto's speculation, there may be 3 reasons for the failure in evolution. First is the lack of Otsutsuki Indra's chakra. It is stated that Hagoromo's chakra is necessary for awakening the Rinnegan. The chakra of Azura was obtained from Hashirama cells, and if, for the awakening of Rinnegan, the chakra of both Azura and Indra are really needed, then the reason for failure this time was the lack of Indra's chakra. The second speculation is that Shirsui is not the original owner of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eyes. The original owner of this pair of eternal Manjikyu is Uchiha Ryota. Perhaps Uchiha Ryota's body must be used as a breeding ground for the evolution of this pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan into the Rinnegan. After all, Madara's Rinnegan evolved from his own eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. And the third speculation in Kuroto's mind is the lack of chakra as a whole. This speculation of Kuroto is not without a reason. It must not be forgotten that the Battle of the Valley of the End took place when both Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara were probably in their 30s, so in a way, both of them were in their prime. At the end of the war, Madara faked his death with Izanagi through a time transcription seal, managed to obtain Shodaime cells, and later implanted them into his body. But he did not awaken the Rinnegan until his old age when he was near death. As such, he had no choice but to foster the Rinnegan in Nagato, who has the Uzumaki blood and hoped to be later revived by the Samsara of Heavenly Life Jutsu. From this point, it can be confirmed that Madara did not awaken the Rinnegan until decades later in the Battle of the Valley of the End. So, what took Madara such a long time to awaken the Rinnegan? Kuroto speculates 2 possible reasons for such a long delay. First is that because Madara has used Izanagi, so he completely lost the visual prowess of one of his eyes. Therefore, even if Madara has Otsutsuki Indra's chakra along with the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, with just the visual prowess of a single eye, the Yin chakra in his body was not enough. He had to wait for years for his visual prowess to be restored because of the Hashirama cells, then further wait for the Yin and Yang in his body to merge to finally awaken the Rinnegan when he was closer to death. The second speculation is that the evolution of Rinnegan from the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan takes a very large volume of chakra in addition to right stimulation, so the reason why he stayed in the dormancy even after the death of Shodaime Hokage was to continuously accumulate chakra. It can be assumed just how huge would be the volume of chakra if a powerhouse like Madara took several decades to accumulate. Of course, it's also possible that both reasons are correct. But anyway, even if a single conjecture of Kuroto is correct, then it can be judged that the evolution of eternal Manjikyu into Rinnegan is still a very far sight in the future, and when reaching this conclusion, Kuroto can't help but think awakening Rinnegan might really be not as simple as I had assumed initially. But Kuroto was not disappointed. Kuroto's main objective is the Project Godhood. Everything else is just some side hustle or hobby that Kuroto occasionally takes interest in. If they succeed, then well and good, but if not, then he will not delve too much of his time into them unless these side hustle and hobbies are related to his Project Godhood. About 2 hours later, Kuroto and Shirsui slowly walked out of the secret laboratory. Of course, Shirsui couldn't walk on his own because of weakness, thus Kuroto helped him. Itachi, who had been keeping watch over the surrounding for all this while, noticed the arrival of the two. At the same time, he also noticed that although Shirsui looks weak and tired, he was still smiling and talking a bit cheerfully with Kuroto, which means that implantation operation was successful. This was Itachi's conclusion, and after understanding this, he hurriedly greeted the two with a joyful expression. "I knew you would successfully make it, Shirsui-san." Shisui smiled bitterly and shook his head. He wanted to tease Itachi for worrying too much but did not have enough energy to do so. At the same time he did not disclose how closer to death he was in this operation. Kuroto said to Itachi, Shisui's current state is very weak, let's not talk about missions, Shisui won't even be able to fight or defend himself in this period. If the enemy were to notice this weakness of Shisui, they will definitely take advantage of it, so I am assigning you the mission of protecting Shisui until he fully recovers. You are to stay by his side all the time and make sure that Shisui remains safe, understand? Itachi quickly nodded, understand captain. Then Kuroto said to Shisui, make sure to follow the training regimen I gave you and do not overexert yourself for the next month, until you are fully recovered. Additionally, don't forget to send me daily reports regarding the changes in the body and eyes that you experience. This data will be very crucial. Shisui nodded, don't worry Kuroto-san, I will keep it in mind. Then Shisui with the help of Itachi went to his home, and Kuroto also went in the direction of his home, but not before making sure that no traces of the secret laboratory being present here were left after that short accident. On his way home, Kuroto also felt that he was unusually exhausted today, but fortunately, Shisui successfully survived the operation. Compared to this result his fatigue was not worth mentioning. Reaching home, Kuroto ate a random cup of ramen, and while lying on the bed he thought of his next move. Most importantly the next clone he should focus upon. The pair of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Shisui's body did not evolve into the Rinnegan, however, the visual prowess increased a lot. Additionally, with the mastery of Enten, Ashihomi the requirements of the standard fire chakra clone are finally progressing and this clone will be complete sooner or later. The progress of Water Clone 2 is on the right track when Kuroto completely masters Sennin mode with the Suijin clone, the strength of Suijin clone will be nothing to scoff at. Then there is also Okami mode and Kurokami mode. Kurokami mode was inspired by the Yamada no Jutsu of Orochimaru, and it certainly is a nice jutsu to battle Bijou class opponents. Overall, Kuroto doesn't have to focus much on Water Nature Clone and Fire Nature Clone aside from the continuous training, so now he must direct his attention toward the third clone. Which element to choose, and whose cells to use for the clone becomes the next major issue Kuroto must focus his attention on. With a thoughtful expression, Kuroto muttered, next, which clone should I choose? At present, Kuroto has 4 clones left to create. These 4 include, Earth Nature Clone, Wind Nature Clone, Lightning Nature Clone, and Yang Nature Clone. Because of a lack of confidence in being able to create the Yang Nature Clone due to immature cloning technology, Kuroto has postponed the creation of Yang Clone for the time being. Therefore, the choices in front of Kuroto are only limited to Earth Nature Clone, Wind Nature Clone, and Lightning Nature Clone. Compared to the other 2 chakra natures, Earth chakra nature is most stable, so the difficulty of creating Earth clone should be less when compared to the Wind nature clone and Lightning nature clone, and it is also a good choice when it comes to the matter of Kekii Genkai of Earth chakra nature. In Kuroto's impression, the Kekii Genkai related to Earth release is wood release, mud release, crystal release, lava release, explosion release, steel release, and magnet release, and there is also the Kekii Tota dust release. Although wood release is without a doubt the strongest of all the aforementioned Kekii Genkai, it is also influenced by the Yang chakra. The stronger the Yang chakra of the user, the stronger the effect of the wood-style jutsu, so in a way, wood release can be regarded as semi-Kekii Tota of the Yang nature because of the influence of Yang chakra on this Kekii Genkai. The others too are good and simple Kekii Genkai, although each has its own advantages, the shortcomings are also quite clear. However, the Kekii Tota, dust release related to the Earth chakra nature makes him somewhat interested and can be regarded as the goal for the Earth nature clone. But the problem is that in the current shinobi world, only Sandame Tsuchigi Jinoki has mastered dust release, and obtaining his cells as well as information on dust release would be an extremely difficult task. It is necessary to know that even in the 4th Great Shinobi War that happened 10 years later in the canon, the old and frail Inoki was still a force to be reckoned with, so it is conceivable how strong he would be currently when he has just started to go downhill. So even after thinking for a while, Kuroto couldn't make up his mind, and because of being really exhausted, he failed to reach a conclusion as he went to sleep unknowingly. 1 week later. Today the Konoha village is decorated all over, and there is a bit of a celebratory spirit in the village. The reason for such an occasion is the Grand Alliance ceremony that the village is hosting to officially finalize the alliance with the nation surrounding the Land of Fire. Kuroto's team Ro, except for Itachi, was also participating in the alliance ceremony. They were responsible for taking care of the defenses in the ceremony. Of course, they were not in their Anbu disguises, but rather in general shinobi vests. So, currently, Kuroto was dressed in his newly obtained Jonin vest, while the 3 of his subordinates were also in their Konoha shinobi vests, watching the incoming people. Standing on the roof of a house, with one hand on her waist, Kurine muttered with a frowned expression, "Is it really safe to allow so many foreigners to enter the village all at once?" Heiei coughed a little, then replied, the purpose of holding this alliance ceremony is to deter the Akatsuki organization and Amatsukami. Of course, the bigger the ceremony the better, therefore, the participation of so many people is unavoidable. Yugao nodded with Heiei. Yes, as long as this alliance ceremony is successfully completed, we will have allies in the northwest and southwest of the Land of Fire, so there would be no need to deploy so many shinobi to watch out for possible attacks from those specific directions. As such, more shinobi can be deployed into other tasks, such as locating the Akatsuki base. Kurenai shook her head and said, that's not what I meant. What I mean is, what if there are spies present in this crowd? Any one of them could be a spy and we won't know for sure. Not to mention there is no guarantee that these villages don't hold ill will towards Konoha. There is also a possibility that Akatsuki will take advantage of this ceremony to launch an attack on the village. What do you think, Kuroto-san? Your opinion, as the person in charge of the security. Kuroto nodded to Kurenai's words. It's possible and something that is very likely to be true, but as Hokage-sama stated, we don't have very many options. As such, instead of talking and discussing, focus on the crowd and keep an eye for any sort of unusuality. Should you find anything unusual, immediately report it to Inoichi-san and let Shikaku-san and other shinobi handle them discreetly. Kurenai, Heiei, and Yugao nodded and kept a watch on the crowd. And Kuroto too focused his attention on the crowd, quietly observing the comers. This time, there are 5 villages involved in the alliance ceremony. Konoha is one of the 5, and in addition to Konoha, there are Sunagakure, Kyusugakure, Takigakure, and the newly formed Otogakure. Sandame also wanted to let Yugikure participate, but that village has regressed into a hot spring town from that of a shinobi village. Amigakure no longer exists officially because the daimyo of the Land of Rain has disbanded the village. As for the other shinobi villages, they have their own internal matters to deal with. As such, they didn't have enough time to participate in such a fruitless alliance ceremony. At least those are some official statements issued by various shinobi villages. Kuroto wasn't much surprised about this alliance thing. Even in the canon, during Chunin exam arc, several shinobi villages participated in the Chunin exams, and all of them were allied to Konoha, even if that alliance was forced upon them. So anyway, it wouldn't be wrong to say that even if the threat of Akatsuki and Amatsukami did not exist, Sandame would have still made some efforts to win the alliance of several shinobi villages in the countries around the Land of Fire. After all, the lesson of the Third Great Shinobi War is too profound to be forgotten. Konoha was besieged from all 4 sides, and had it not been for the Yondaime Hokage to single-handedly turn the tides of the war at all the 4 battlefronts, there is no telling where would Konoha be now. So, the alliance ceremony is not just a measure against Akatsuki, but also a measure against other great shinobi villages. Although, how serious these villages are going to be when it comes to the matter of alliance, is not that hard to figure out. Kuroto is not really interested in it as they would make no difference in the end anyway. While Kuroto was pondering over these things, suddenly his expression changed. This is because he caught the sight of a few familiar figures in the crowd. The leader of the representatives from Otogakure is a young man in his 20s, with long brown hair tied in a ponytail and a gentle smile plastered on his face. The facial features of this young man exude a calm and wise demeanor. Most of all, he seems to be a patient man of gentle nature. But those eyes, he is most definitely Orochimaru-sama, thought Kuroto. Orochimaru may be able to fool anyone with that disguise of his, but not Kuroto, because Kuroto can literally recognize him at a glance. He came here in person for the alliance ceremony. Does he intend to cause trouble? Thought Kuroto. Then he focused his gaze on the 3 shinobi following Orochimaru. That's undoubtedly Yamato, then Kimimaro, and finally Haku. The 3 shinobi following Orochimaru were all recognized by Kuroto, and this also made him feel surprised because Kuroto didn't expect Orochimaru to be courageous enough to bring Yamato to the village. Does he really intend to cause trouble? After all, why else would he bring Yamato of all people to Konoha if that's not the case? I think I will have to have a conversation with him, muttered Kuroto, because he is in no mood to deal with Orochimaru when the threat of Akatsuki is constantly lingering in his head. After making up his mind, Kuroto's gaze eased up and he moved his gaze to Kimimaro at the end of the line. Looking at Kimimaro, a thought flashed in his mind. Since Kuroto made the Yondaime Mizukichi, Yagura a subordinate of his, he has read a lot of documents hidden in the archives of Kirigakure. A lot of them even involved Shikatsu Miyaku/Dead Bone Pulse, the Kekii Genkai of the Kagaya clan. The documents seized from the Kagaya clan before their annihilation even record a millennium-year-long history of the Kagaya clan, and it has been explicitly stated multiple times that Kagaya clan has existed since the founding of ninjutsu and ninja sect, or maybe even before that when ninshu was prevalent. According to Kuroto's own impression from canon, Otsutsuki Kagaya has a Kekii Mora technique called all-killing ash bones. It is a certain kill technique where she uses her bone structure. And it wouldn't be wrong to assume that Dead Bone Pulse, that is the Kekii Genkai of the Kagaya clan, is derived from Otsutsuki Kagaya's ability to manipulate and weaponize her own bone structure, coupled with the name of the clan, that is the Kagaya clan. It is very likely that the Kagaya clan is closely linked to Otsutsuki Kagaya. Otsutsuki Kagaya had two biological children, the descendants of the elder of the two. Otsutsuki Hagoromos are fairly known, which include the Senju clan, the Uzumaki clan, and the Uchiha clan. There is also some inexplicable linkage to Kinkaku and Ginkaku, but there is no clear evidence in Kuroto's hand at the moment. But even if we take just the Senju, Uzumaki, and Uchiha clan, then the Senju and Uzumaki inherited Rikuto Sennin's body of sage, while the Uchiha clan inherited the eyes of the sage. Therefore, if Kagaya clan is also a descendant of Otsutsuki Kagaya, then it is very likely that they are the descendant of the younger brother of the two, that is the descendant of Otsutsuki Himura, similar to that of the Otsutsuki clan of the moon, and Hyuga clan. On a bolder hypothesis, if Hyuga clan and the Otsutsuki clan on the moon inherited the eyes of Himura, then Kagaya clan most definitely inherited the body of Himura. Kimimaro should be one of the last two survivors of the Kagaya clan, thought Kuroto as he focused his gaze on Kimimaro. Because of the information provided to him by Yagura, Kuroto knows more details about the Kagaya Takashi. As such, he knows that Takashi is a shinobi of the Kagaya clan. But even if that's the case, Kuroto still prefers Kimimaro for extracting the cells of the Kagaya clan. After all, Kimimaro is extremely talented and almost undefeatable. In the canon, there are not many records of Kimimaro's battle, putting aside the doubtful battle where he helped Orochimaru in the assassination of Yondaime Kazekage. The mere statements about him make him an extremely strong character. As a child, Kimimaro was kept imprisoned because the patriarch of the Kagaya clan feared him. When released to Kirigikura, he was able to continuously kill the shinobi of Kirigikura and still managed to survive, whereas the rest of his clan save for Takashi was annihilated. Trained personally by Orochimaru, Kimimaro's strength further increased by leaps and bounds. Later he became the leader of Sound 4, and it was stated that he defeated all four of Sound 4 alone, the same Sound 4 who defeated the Konoha Special Mission Platoon, provided that the Konoha Special Mission Platoon was probably tired from their mission, but even then, their strength is nothing to scoff at. Not to mention, Kimimaro in his terminally ill state, the state where him being able to move alone was considered miraculous. In that very same state, he not only obliterated more than 300 of Naruto's Kyuubi chakra enhanced shadow clones, but even went on to fight a weakened Rock Lee and the Jinchuriki of Ichibi, Gaara, and in fact, he not only fought them but nearly killed them both before dying of his terminal illness. He may have had the advantage of being older and more experienced of the three, but that advantage can be put aside considering his terminally ill state where he was only a step away from death. And the next part comes in the Fourth Great Shinobi War, where he without even using his curse mark was able to match up to Kyuubi chakra mode Naruto's shadow clone and still remained undefeated. Even the samurai of the Land of Iron were unable to do anything to him. Not to mention, he was and is still probably Orochimaru's first choice as a vessel after Uchiha Itachi. So overall, it won't be wrong to assume that Kimimaro is most definitely as talented as Itachi. The same kind of talent, if allowed to bloom, will put down all. So, it's no wonder that Kishimoto-sensei decided to put the bud in the nib before it could bloom into a flower. A fine choice indeed, muttered Kuroto. At this moment, perhaps it was because Kuroto wasn't trying to be discreet while observing Kimimaro, the kid noticed someone watching him. He raised his face to look in the direction of the watcher, and his expression instantly turned cold. At the same time, Orochimaru in his disguise also followed Kimimaro's gaze and looked in the direction of Kuroto. Looking at Kuroto dressed in his jonin vest, the corners of Orochimaru's lips quivered, revealing a smile that wasn't really a smile. Kuroto did not bother to entertain Orochimaru, but noticing Kimimaro's look, he muttered, "Very sharp indeed." Kuroto may not have been discreet, but this does not mean that he was being explicit, so the fact that Kimimaro noticed him alone speaks volumes about him. But contrary to Kuroto's attitude towards the disguised Orochimaru, the reaction of his subordinate was completely different. Kurenai had subconsciously reached out for a kunai in her shinobi bag. She didn't know the specific reason, but her instincts were screaming at her to be very careful of that Otogekure. Kuroto immediately put his hand on Kurenai's shoulder and stopped her midway, and said, "Otogekure is going to be an ally of Konoha, so we can't make any move on him. Take a deep breath and calm your nerves. For now, he isn't an enemy, at least, I hope he isn't." As instructed by Kuroto, Kurenai took a deep breath and let go of the kunai she had almost drawn out. "I am fine, thanks." Kuroto nodded and looked back in the direction of Orochimaru. At the same time, Heiei asked, "Captain, that shinobi of Otogekure is very strong, probably stronger than an elite jonin level. We would better keep a watch on him." Kuroto nodded. "Yugao, inform Inoichi-san about him. Also have Shikaku-san instruct someone to keep a watch over him. The watcher need not be hostile towards him, just remain in close proximity to make him understand that he is under surveillance, to keep his actions limited." "Yes, Captain." Yugao nodded and passed Kuroto's instruction to Yamanaka Inoichi. At this time, Kurenai said, "That kid with gray hair, he also doesn't seem to be ordinary, especially that cold expression towards us." Kuroto smiled and didn't say anything, because Kuroto understands that Kimimaro is someone fiercely loyal to Orochimaru, and values Orochimaru's interest above everything, even himself. It didn't take long for Kuroto's instructions to be followed, and the village sent someone to not only keep a watch over him but also act as a guide for the Otogekure shinobi. Coincidentally enough, the one who came was none other than Mitarashi Anko, and Kuroto can't help but sigh upon looking at her. Of course, it had to be Anko of all. After a brief greeting to the Otogekure team, Anko led them in the direction of the Hokage building. Of course, Anko is not that bad of a choice. She might have been chosen for the task while keeping in mind that she can keep a watch over them, at the same time not make them feel uncomfortable because of her carefree attitude. Obviously, with the passage of time, Anko has gradually walked out of Orochimaru's shadow, and these days the girl has become almost similar to what she was in the canon, loud, stubborn, and prone to acting without thinking. While leading the Otogekure team, she even went on to boast about Konoha's power to the disguised Orochimaru, in an attempt to give them a good understanding of who's the boss here. But everything she is talking about is quite useless because the one listening to her is none other than Orochimaru, who had a mocking expression as he paid great interest in Anko's boasting. At this time, Kimimaro also stopped looking at Kuroto, and he seemed to have reached some sort of determination. Looking at Kimimaro, Kuroto also remembers a piece of information that he learned about the Kagaya clan from the confidential archives in Kirigikure. The document states that all the members of the Kagaya clan, without any exception, have wind nature as their main chakra attribute. This fact is quite similar to the Uchiha clan, as all the members of the Uchiha clan have fire chakra as their primary chakra nature. This fact also shows that Kagaya clan, quite similar to the Uchiha clan, is not only a very powerful shinobi clan, but also has a stable bloodline. If the Kagaya clan are really descendants of Himura, then using Kimimaro's genes for creating the wind clone is a very viable option. Thought Kuroto. And if Kuroto creates the wind clone using Kimimaro's cell, then that would mean, his main body has the eyes of Himura, and wind clone has the body of Himura. Additionally, the fire clone has the genes of the Uchiha clone, which is equivalent to possessing the eyes of the sage, and then the yang clone he will create in the future will inevitably be chosen from either the Uzumaki descent or the Senju descent, so the yang clone will have the body of sage. In this way, when these four clones are fused together using the Chimera Jutsu, they will gather the body and eyes of both Himura and Hagoromo, and when thinking of such a thing, Kuroto can't help but wonder, if this is achieved in the final fusion, wouldn't it mean that I will be the closest to Otsutsuki Kagaya in terms of bloodline? What are you mumbling, Kuroto-san? Kurenai asked from the side. However, Kuroto was too busy to listen to Kurenai's question and didn't reply. At a secret training field in Konoha. Ha, ha. Kakashi was breathing heavily as he wiped off the sweat from his forehead. I wonder how long has it been since I trained so fervently. Muttered Kakashi as he remembered the past month during which he has been training almost sleepless, without any care for the food or rest. When he was young, because of his talent and desire to prove certain things, Kakashi graduated early from the academy without much effort. Later, as the years progressed, he soon became a chunin from a genin and then a jonin by the age of 11 or 12, even managed to develop a Class A lightning ninjutsu, Chidori. Kakashi's talent has always been superior to those of the same generation, even those of four noble clone couldn't compare to him. Sarutobi Asuma, Hyuga Kuroto, and Uchiha Obito were no exception. However, after experiencing several tragedies one after another, which included the suicide of his father Sakumo, the sacrifice of his friend Obito, the death of his other friend Rin at his own hand, then finally the death of his sensei Minato and Kushina, whom Kakashi was supposed to protect as per the mission assigned to him, Kakashi lost all motivation he once had and became to grow darker and gloomier. The companionship from Guy, Kuroto, and Shursui indeed helped him in the past few years, but he is still far from overcoming it. But even so, the dark and decadent him was still the best, at least until some time ago. Gradually Kakashi noticed that whether Guy, Kuroto, or Shursui, all three of them seems to have surpassed him. Kakashi too became strong, but those three were stronger than him, but he never felt any urgency, even if he knew that the target of Akatsuki and Amatsukami was Uzumaki Naruto, the son of his sensei whom he has to protect, because Kakashi never truly believed that these two organizations would be able to overpower entire Konoha. Well, that used to be the case until the War of Summit. His entire perception of strength and power was broken at Amigakure. After witnessing the level of power of the leaders of the two organizations, Kakashi realized just how wrong he was, and how insignificant and powerless he is. At the same time, he understood that with the way he is, he would never be able to protect the village and Naruto, and then a long-lost desire to grow stronger burned in his heart. He was determined to work harder than ever. This is why when given the offer by Sandame to join the special tactical team, Kakashi didn't refuse and readily accepted. Looking at the broken tree in front of him, then at his hand, Kakashi muttered, I have still too much to learn to match up to Minato-sensei. Kakashi sighed and put the kunai in his shinobi bag. If I am not wrong, then today is supposed to be the alliance ceremony. Let's see if I can find something interesting there. Muttered Kakashi while stretching his tired body and left the training field. He was going to go home, take a bath, then walk around the village for a while, at least that was the plan, but for some reason that Kakashi himself didn't understand, he was on the outskirts of Konoha, more specifically at the Konoha cemetery. Why did I come here? Muttered Kakashi in wonder, as he looked at the bouquet of flowers in his hand that he unknowingly bought at the Yamanaka flower shop, but Kakashi didn't really care too much and proceeded ahead. Kakashi spends much of his free time either at Konoha Cemetery or at Memorial Stone, and he would often stay here for as much as a whole day telling all kinds of things to Obito and Rin. Sighing slightly, Kakashi slowly walked in front of Rin's tombstone and habitually prepared to clean up the growing weeds, burn incense and add a few flowers and talk about his life, but when he arrived here, he found that her tombstone was already cleaned and even a bouquet of fresh flowers, similar to his, that Rin particularly liked was also present here. Kakashi looked around but noticed no one in the immediate vicinity. He couldn't help but wonder who came to visit Rin, not to mention they even knew about Rin's preference when it comes to flowers. Kakashi's question was a valid one, because Rin was an orphan just like him, as such it is hard to imagine someone other than him coming to visit Rin, at the same time being aware of her likes. Perhaps it was just some coincidence, and perhaps someone else also remembered Rin. I guess I should try to find who that person is, muttered Kakashi as he too lit incense and put the flower on Rin's tombstone, then proceeded to tell her all that has been happening in the village and the shinobi world for the past few months, along with the things he has been doing all this while, and at the same time apologize for not being able to come more often. While Kakashi was busy talking to Rin, he did not notice the figure of a swirled masked individual sitting on the trunk of a tree and silently watching him from the distant forest.